So welcome everyone. My name is Amanda Ford, and we want to thank you for joining today's question and answer webinar for the Safe and Affordable Fund for Equity and Resilience program, also known as SAFER. The meeting will be held virtually and it's being recorded and webcast publicly in both Spanish and English. The main points will be captured by our note takers and will be uploaded to the SAFER website in the coming weeks. Today, we're hosting this meeting virtually from the traditional territory and homelands of the Maidu, Miwok, and Nisenan people in the modern city of Sacramento. We know that they're still actively working to stabilize their livelihoods and preserve their way of life. We also want to honor the groups who've experienced economic, environmental, and social disadvantages as a result of historical marginalization. We know that we're meeting today in very challenging times, and we recognize the disproportionate impact the global pandemic has had on all of you, and especially on our marginalized communities. We also want to recognize that the country is currently reeling from the loss of yet more Black lives at the hands of police brutality. Our work here today is meant to strengthen and empower all of the voices that are working throughout California for safe, affordable water. So here are some meeting guidelines that we would like you to follow. If you have any technical or language support, or if you're in need of any assistance during the session, please email us at safer@waterboards.ca.gov. Water board staff and advisory group members, if you're on this meeting right now, please mute yourself when you're not speaking. And then if you are joining us and you would like to make a comment or ask a question during today's session, please fill out the online form at the bit.ly site you see on the screen. If you can't fill out the online form, that's totally fine. We can accept it via email. Just include your name, affiliation, the last 3 digits of your phone number, and a comment or question summary with the subject Q&A public comment. You can send that to safer@waterboards.ca.gov. It's okay if you don't get all that stuff perfectly. We just need to know mostly your 3 digits of your phone number and the topic that you'd like to talk about. I'd also like to remind folks who are joining us, our advisory group members and state water board staff who are joining us from the Zoom link, that you can choose your screens, so you can choose either Spanish or English versions of this meeting. So we just wanted to say that the purpose of the question and answer session is to provide an opportunity for members of the public to share their questions and comments and hear directly from state water board members, state water board staff, and from advisory group members. We're going to try our best to answer questions today. In our time, we have about 2 hours. And if we're not able to answer all of the questions during the 2 hours, then we'll make sure that your answers get follow up. We also want to say that during our morning advisory group meeting, we did have some questions that were asked from the public, and those questions are going to be included in today's session. Next, I would like to introduce one of OPP's colleagues here, Haiti, and she's going to do a SAFER overview for us.
Thank you, Amanda. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Haiti Yanamine. Before we get to the Q&A session, we want to begin by grounding everyone with a brief overview of what SAFER is. The Safe and Affordable Funding for Equity and Resilience program, also known as SAFER, is a comprehensive set of tools, funding sources, and regulatory authorities designed to help struggling water systems sustainably and affordably provide safe drinking water to their customers and meet the goals of safe drinking water for all Californians. Earlier today, State Water Board staff met with the advisory group members to discuss how the funds from the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Fund will be spent and how water systems will be prioritized, as well as which potential solution might be used. The State Water Board convened an advisory group, also known as GROUP, in December of 2019 to provide input into the development of the policy, the fund expenditure plan, and overall implementation of the fund. The group is made up of 19 members that represent public water systems, technical assistance providers, local agencies, non-governmental organizations, the public and residents served by community water systems in disadvantaged communities, state small water systems, and domestic wells. The fund expenditure plan adopted annually by the State Water Board directs how money from the fund can be spent. The plan in December of 2019 to provide input into the development of the policy. The fund expenditure. The plan is based on a drinking water needs assessment that prioritizes projects for funding. The State Water Board is currently accepting public comment on the fund expenditure plan. The comment period will close on June 16th. The board will consider the adoption of the plan at the July 7th board meeting. The questions and comments you shared today will be shared with the board members and will help us make sure this program and the associated funding is meeting the needs of the communities. As mentioned earlier, we met with the advisory group members to discuss key elements of the fund expenditure plan. Several of the advisory group members are joining us during the Q&A session. We recognize the advisory group members as an invaluable resource for this group and would like to invite a current advisory group member to share a little more from their point of view on SAFER. Does any group member want to volunteer? I will wait for an advisory group member to volunteer, and if no one does, I will call from our list.
I think we actually have Maria and Benjamin volunteered before the meeting. If they're on, they might be prepped. And if not, we also have Dawn and Horacio.
Great. Maria and Benjamin, please share your...
Are on right now.
Are they on?
I don't think so.
No. Okay, let me see who I can choose from the list.
We do have Dawn.
Maybe Horacio or Dawn.
Yeah. Okay, Dawn, please share your name, affiliate, community, or location, and tell us how your experience has been as a SAFER advisory group member, and how is or can SAFER impact your community and your concerns. Also, we will be accepting applications for SAFER advisory members in September. What advice would you like to share for future advisory group members?
Okay, I didn't actually prepare anything, but I think this is really important, and I've gotten a lot of value out of my involvement, so I would be happy to make at least a couple of remarks. So I'm Dawn White. I'm the water quality manager for Golden State Water Company, and I am spending a good portion of my time right now working with small community water systems in areas near where my company operates systems. And that led me to want to be involved in this and help, further the state's goals with respect to small communities that don't have access to safe and affordable drinking water. And I can say there's a lot of work, and there's a lot of research, and there's a lot of time that goes into it, but it's also very rewarding. I'm watching, we've had 4 meetings now, and the ability to watch this evolve and to get more understanding of what's going on. And I've also seen that our input has been used in a really productive way, and that each time there's a meeting or there's the policy and now the plan, we've had the opportunity to make comments and watch that evolve, so that we know our comments are being taken to heart and used. And it's also very satisfying because each of the advisory group members have a different perspective. and some of us, myself included, focus on certain areas and others on other concerns. And so it's not only an opportunity to provide input, but it's also an opportunity to gain perspective over the whole issue. And I think that empowers each of us to do our part even better. So for those that are committed to this goal and ideal, I think it's a really worthwhile program to be involved with. So yeah, I think
Great.
that's, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dawn, for sharing. Okay, do we still have Horacio?
Can you hear me?
Yes. So Horacio, I'll repeat the questions for you right now. So please share your name, affiliate, community, or location, and tell us how has your experience been as a SAFER Advisory Group member, and how is or can SAFER impact your community and your concerns. Also, we will be accepting applications for SAFER Advisory members in September. What advice would you like to share for future advisory group members?
Okay, my name is Horacio Amezquita. I live in San Gerardo. It's a small community in the Salinas Valley, and we've been having water issues, drinking water issues with nitrates and TCP since 2001. So I've been involved with water issues back probably in 2001. That's when I got more involved, and I because of the water issues that we had in our community, I got involved with different issues that were happening in other communities in San Joaquin Valley, LA, Coachella, and here in the area. So I was checking out how different communities have different problems, and so because of that, I was involved with other agencies and like Clean Water Action, Community Water Center, and Environmental Justice Coalition for Water, and California Rural Legal Assistance. And we were watching other communities that that were trying to get clean water. And so because of that, I had to get involved with the IRWM and the GSAs and other stakeholder groups, so we can find solutions to the water problems that our communities have. So that's what made me kind of apply here, because most of the communities that don't have clean water, they have to wait too many years to get clean water, and some of them, they're not even organized or have someone to help them. So I hope with the SAFER we can find solutions to the problems that communities are facing by not having clean water, and sometimes putting their health at risk, because there are so many contaminants that can hurt people's health. So if someone else comes to the advisory committee, as long as you have the willingness to help other communities and learn from other people, I think they will be doing fine. It's just a matter of trying to help and find solutions to the problems that we have in California and in many other parts of the world. There's all kinds of issues with water. So, and I also like on the safer group, there's different people that are working in different water issues, and I learned from them. So it's a good experience. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Horacio. Do we have another advisory group member who would like to share their thoughts? Okay. So we like to thank you, Don and Horacio, for sharing, and thank you for your collaboration and efforts for the SAFER program. In closing, we recognize the tireless work of many, the dedication, coordination, advocacy, education, and awareness year after year fighting for this fund. We take great pride in being a part of the SAFER program and are working with you to make sure that every Californian has a right to safe, affordable drinking water. We thank you all.
Oh wait, I want to something too. Can I speak right now? This is Laura Rosenberger Hyder.
Hey, Laura, this is Amanda. We're gonna call you in just a second. We're almost
Okay.
there. And then
Okay, thanks.
Itzel is gonna call you and she'll say your name. It looks like you are number 3. Oh no, you're number 2. So you'll be the second speaker, Laura.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So thank you, Haiti, and thank you, advisory group members. And like we just said to Laura, that we are going to go into our public question and answer now. So I'd like to introduce Itzel. We're not on closing remarks, so I'm not sure why my slides got all out of the way. So here we go. We're back to Itzel to moderate our question and answer session. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Amanda. So like Amanda mentioned, we're now on to our question and answer session, which is, the big bulk of today's meeting. So this session is open to questions and comments for all SAFER related topics. We have State Water Board staff from different departments and offices standing by, ready to answer and respond to your questions and comments. So far, it looks like we have about 11 comments to get through. And so we're scheduled to go till about 4 p.m. today, and Water Board staff are prepared to stay that entire time to make sure that we answer as many questions as we can. So each person will have about 3 minutes to speak. There's also an option for staff to read your comment out loud if you prefer. Just mark that either in the form or in the email that you send to us. And so if each person takes an entire 3 minutes, and then if Water Board staff respond in about 3 minutes, that gets us to about 15 questions that we can get through during this time. So we're encouraging you all to be concise in your questions and answers. All right, let's go. We will start with, first on the queue would be Horacio Gonzalez. And I will see, I'm not seeing him on the Zoom. So Horacio, if you're on, I will unmute you. Horacio Gonzalez. If not, we will come back. All right, so it looks like Horacio's not on. So we're gonna move on to our next comment, which is Laura Rosenberger. So Laura, the floor is yours.
Yes, this is Laura Rosenberger Hyder. I volunteer at the California Environmental Justice Coalition, President Against Fracking, Sierra Club. The thing is, I'm getting much done because I'm so allergic to water. I mean, it started with TCP. I think it was high, like in 2018, the TCP was really high on my water over here, like in southeast Fresno, not far from my home. And I've gotten rashes all over. And ever since, most of the tap waters I get rashes from to some degree or another. So I've been using filtered water from Glacier machine, but not having good transportation, now being a little older, over 50, and my feet are swollen. It's really hard to go bicycle out and get water. I'm thinking home delivery would be a good idea for people that don't have water. They get allergic to it. They need water delivery. Like someone should go around with a truck and fill people's like those glass milk jugs full of water, or 5-gallon bottles or something. Deliver to people's homes. I only need 7 gallons of water a day, and the tap water I could use for the garden. But for me, I only need like 7 gallons of water a day. especially in the summer. Well, maybe in the winter I need only 4. So the thing is, like, if anyone doesn't have water that's not allergenic and where they're allergic, they should have free water delivery. Do they have a program that does that? That filters the water and brings it in a truck to people's homes? And the second thing is, I'm also high in arsenic. I did a blood test, and I know Fresno water has a lot of arsenic in it. It's just a common pollutant in the food and the water here in Central Valley. And they didn't say there's no known health impacts of high arsenic, but I feel like I'm being borderline getting strokes, having a problem with dehydration, not able to hydrate myself. I mean, I drink a lot of water, but I don't feel hydrated. I'm taking minerals and magnesium. I heard a lot of people are magnesium deficient, so I've been on the vitamins, but I'd rather have just drinkable water. Even though the filtered water does clean very well, that pure water, I use it a little bit in my clothes sometimes. And it's good, it cleans my skin well anyway. I've been probably up for oil on like 4 times a day to keep my skin from getting dry. I have a problem with dry skin. And I'm having trouble with my typing, like dizziness, lightheadedness, trouble typing, problems like that, because it might be water related, or just dehydration related. I'm getting some tests to see about that. And
Well, thanks for
let's see.
sharing all of that story, Laura. I know you've been struggling with that for a really long time. We actually do have someone from the State Water Board that wanted to share a little bit of information about a possible program. So I'll invite Jasmine Oaxaca to answer that. Thank you, Laura.
Hi, Laura.
All right,
Thanks
thanks.
for sharing your concerns with us. So we do have some programs available at the State Water Board to receive funding and bottled water deliveries. And so I'd like to maybe offline get your information, your contact information, so that we can put you in touch with one of our technical assistance providers in your area who has a bottled water program to provide bottled water to households and folks that need it. So I will, I'll work with our Office of Public Participation staff to connect with you and get your contact information. Thank you.
All right.
So the fracking. Oh, thanks.
Sorry about that, Laura. Okay. So it looks like Jasmine will be getting back to you offline to make sure that we follow up and get you some of that information and links. All right. So moving on to our next commentator. I don't believe they're on. It's Logan Largent. And let's see. I am not hearing that he's on, so we're going to move on to our next comment, which will be given by Lisa Gover. Lisa, the mic is yours.
I'm not sure my mic will work. You'll have to tell me if you can hear me.
I can hear you. Great,
thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to ask a question or two. I submitted something last night. I was listening most of this morning to, and I appreciated what the advisory committee members were able to discuss. I work for a tribe, and I was particularly interested in the Safe Drinking Water Fund, the SAFER program, because it is the only funding mechanism I'm aware of that the tribe I work for might be eligible to receive fund from, that helps with the operations and maintenance funds, which brings me to my comments about the things that I've been reading. First off, I was concerned that tribal governments were not being consulted with on the program, and I guess I heard that in one of the breakout groups that there was an outreach program being developed. So that's I can see that you're not getting a lot of tribal government or tribal public water system people involved in this so far. One one committee member to cover the entire state and every one of the tribes concerns with this program is a heavy load. So hats off to somebody trying to do that. My question is this: if we're talking about O&M funds, how are we? How did the priorities reflect that O&M is a fundable activity under this program? How much funds are going to be available for O&M, and how is the issue of limited sovereign immunity waivers going to apply to tribes that may receive a little bit of funds under this program? I have a million questions, but I'll leave it right at that. Thank you for allowing me to take some time here.
Yeah, thank you for that, Lisa. I believe it sounds like we want to start maybe with Adriana Renteria, the Director for the Office of Public Participation. Might try and answer one or two of your questions. So Adriana?
Thank you so much for your question, Lisa. We really appreciate it. So I'm going to try to answer some of your questions, and then I'm going to invite my colleagues to jump in as well. So in terms of how we are planning on developing our outreach for to tribal governments, a couple different ways. Just kind of taking a step back and looking at which tribal water systems in the state are currently not meeting safe drinking water requirements. Our team has been working with Cali, PA Region 9 to coordinate on just getting tribal water data of the different tribal water systems so we can get a better understanding of which tribal water systems need support. Of the state information that we've received, there are 7 tribal water systems that are currently out of compliance. So they're not able to meet safe drinking water requirements. And one of our plans is to develop an outreach plan to work directly with each of them to develop better communication so that they know about this program and that they, if they are interested in applying for it, that they have the support necessary to apply for it. So that's one thing. And in terms of the limited waiver of sovereign immunity, I think that the reason why we're requiring that is just a funding requirement for all of our funding agreements, just to make sure that our funding agreements are able to be accounted for. But the State Water Board really is working to develop a one-to-one relationship with each tribe to make sure that as that's developed, that everybody is in agreement with that. In addition to that outreach, I think the other thing that we just want to mention is, in addition to those 7 water systems that are currently out of compliance, we are thinking about what type of outreach and communication can we share with tribes all across the state who are maybe are able to serve their communities safe drinking water, but may be needing that support for O&M or affordability. So we welcome your thoughts around what type of communication and outreach might be most helpful. And we look forward to continuing to work with the advisory group or outside of this space to develop that plan together. So now I'm going to pass it off to Joe, who can answer a little bit more of the O&M questions that you asked.
Yeah, hi, thank you for your questions. For operation and maintenance, we have set aside some funding or we're proposing to for the next fiscal year that would be focused more on supporting consolidation. So oftentimes when a larger system is consolidating a smaller system, there's both the capital cost for a project to make that happen, and then can take a while for the smaller system to get integrated into the larger system, and there's often deferred operation and maintenance. So that's where our focus will be with O&M costs, is in facilitating consolidation.
All right. Thank you both so much for that response. And let's see, Lisa, thank you so much for your comment. All right. So it looks like we're going to move on to our next commentator, who looks like they're on the line. It's Jonathan Young. So Jonathan, the mic is yours.
Great, thank you so much. My name is Jonathan Young with the California Municipal Utilities Association. I appreciate you taking the time to allow me to ask a few questions today. I did have kind of a couple of questions based in the same area, so I wasn't sure, should I just kind of rapid fire ask the questions and then you guys respond, or one at a time? What would be the best way to do that?
Let's see, maybe you could do, let's try with one at a time and see how that goes.
Okay, sounds good. So one of the questions I had is that ACWA, the Association of California Water Agencies, and CMUA have a joint work group. And as part of that work group, our members have been kind of grappling with trying to understand all of the data that staff has put out in the fund expenditure plan, as well as the appendices. We think it's a really great start, but we were curious, how does the State Water Board staff plan to incorporate the information from the needs analysis into what we've seen so far? And then I guess that's my first question.
Okay, great. So let's see if we have any State Water Board staff who want to take on that question. Let's see, maybe.
Yeah, this is Andrew. I'll take a first stab at that. This is Andrew Altavogt with the Division of Drinking Water, and maybe then Joe can also speak to it if he's able to. But really, I think as you, I believe you're aware, you know, the needs analysis and the risk assessment work that's going on with that. The first iteration of that should be done around March, and that'll be kind of just in time for incorporation, or it should be just in time for incorporation into the next iteration of the fund expenditure plan. And really, I think what we're looking for there is, you know, we'll be able to, with that data, with that initial data, have a more robust list of at-risk systems. So that's the first thing. And we're going to be, you know, between now and then, we're going to be having some workshops about that whole process in terms of the data side of it. And then the other piece of that is that we're going to have a lot more. We're at the same time working on our data management internally and how that's going to work, so that we can pull in as much data, outside data, as we can, and that we can also then share that back out with the public in a more efficient manner than we're able to do now. So it's both a matter of gathering the data and then being able to synthesize it. Hope that gets to your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Andrew.
All right, and did you want to go on to your next question, Jonathan?
Yeah, and one of the things our agencies, and this is more of a comment, are just looking for is to, as the board gets more of the data in line, is just to have it in a readable format. And we'll be kind of mentioning that in our comment letter we'll be submitting. But I did have a follow-up or a separate question on the pilot projects that are mentioned in the fund expenditure plan. I know they touch on the point of use, point of entry technology, and then direct operations and maintenance support. Rereading that, I wasn't exactly sure. Does staff kind of have a vision of what they mean by direct O&M support? Would it be possible to kind of get an expanded explanation from staff beyond what's in the plan?
Yeah, hi, this is Joe Karkowski. Yeah, what we had in mind is, as we have projects coming through for, say, you know, either planning projects or construction projects, and we get detailed information on the rates that those the customers, the residents are paying in those communities, and where we see rates that look like they're especially high. You know, one of the things we'll start looking at is piloting what kind of a direct O&M support might look like. So what we want to do is we want to take advantage of projects that are already in the queue rather than trying to solicit new ones, because we are getting that detailed information. Probably the most obvious will be with a smaller community that maybe has to add treatment to address a compliance issue, and seeing what kind of opportunities there might be to support them in operating and maintaining their new treatment system.
Great, thank you, Joe.
Sure.
All right, and thank you so much, Jonathan. Did you have anything else to add?
That's it. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Have a good one. Okay, next on our queue, we have Stacy Taylor, who I'm not seeing on our queue. So I will go to our next commentator. Let's see, it's going to be Cindy Tuck. So Cindy, the mic is yours.
All right, thank you. And thanks to Water Board staff for having this session. It's great. It helps us to provide more constructive comments because we can understand better what staff's thinking is with the proposal. So I have 3 comments or questions, and I'll do these one at a time also, if that works for you. So the first one has to do with performance metrics, and these are discussed at page 44 of the draft plan. And the way it's proposed right now, the metrics would be based on the term number of communities. And we'd suggest that you look at changing that to the number of systems. And the reason for that suggestion is when you look at public water systems, they may serve part of a community, they may serve parts of multiple communities. So if you are having the metric based on the number of communities, you may not show the positive outcome that you're getting for the public water system. And we'll provide more detail on that in the public comment. But if staff could react to that, that would be great.
Yeah, I was trying to, I'm sorry, this is Joe Karkowski. Thanks, Cindy, for your question. I'm trying to find where you're looking. So you said page 44.
I think it's page 44, and I'll open up at the same time that you are.
Okay.
Yes, so on page 44, in the middle, there's a section on performance metrics. And if you go to the second paragraph, it starts with the number of communities, including state small system and domestic well communities and schools and associated population. So we're suggesting that instead of saying the number of communities, that you use the number of systems.
Okay, and we probably, yeah, we'll think about that. The thing is, when you're looking at a domestic well community, they don't necessarily have a water system, right? But they would be a community that we would be reaching out to, as an example, to provide interim replacement water. So I think that's part of what we are looking at. I mean, certainly we can consider your comment. You know, we want to, all of us want to make sure we're getting full credit for all the our collective hard work. So, you know, we don't want to mistakenly kind of undercount our work by, you know, the terminology we're using. So we'll go ahead and look at that. I mean, the other thing is, as we, you know, for each of those primary metrics that we're tracking, there are a number of kind of subcategories. So I think part of it is just us clarifying that when we're counting number of communities, say we're helping with interim water supplies, how are we doing that count? How are we gathering that data? So that's part of what I think will help address your question, you know, as we go along, is being clear about where are we getting the data from, how are we doing those counts.
Great, and we appreciate you looking at, and I believe in the draft, for example, back in table 1, you're kind of using the term water system in a more global sense, so that it captures domestic wells. So if you look at it in that context, you can see if it works. We think it'll work.
Okay, all right, great, thank you.
Okay, so then moving on to the second comment, which is really a question. We want to understand staff's thinking again on metrics, and the metrics are on page 43 and 44. There's some narrative goals, and we think staff's done a good work there, and it's appropriate to have narrative goals. But there are also some specific numeric goals there. And for example, for the number of dissolution of water systems and numbers for consolidation targets. And, you know, it's been talked about in this session already. The needs assessment is under development. We strongly support having that needs assessment and aligning the future plans with the needs assessment. But since we don't have that now, is it maybe premature to set numeric goals for dissolution and consolidation targets at this point? Again, those are good efforts. The narrative goals are good, but does it make sense right now to have these numeric metrics?
So one of my DDW colleagues will pop on in a second here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, I was muted. Hi, Cindy. This is Michelle Frederick. I will.
Hi, Michelle.
My video here. So yeah, no, with respect to your questions, I think one of the things that people don't recognize is that in addition to, in DDW, in addition to the drinking water program, getting a needs analysis unit, we also got 2 additional units that are focused on water system and engagement and partnership development. So what we're anticipating is as much about those new staff doing outreach as it is, and just sort of the natural increase in water systems consolidating there, as it is the fund expenditure plan in and of itself. I know when Caitlin and I first came on as water partnership coordinators, we started helping facilitate a lot more consolidations, and we're expecting the same of that with our new staff. Does that help answer your question?
I think it's helpful. I think we're just thinking because as the water board looks, for example, at the list of non-compliant systems that consistently fail to meet the primary standards, that, you know, the solution on those systems is going to vary. And until you have the needs assessment, how do you count how many should be consolidated versus what else is a better solution? So that's kind of our thinking, and we'll express that in our comment letter.
I might add too that if you look, it talks about them globally. If I remember correctly, it doesn't specify that they are specifically those that are in violation. So, you know, it's a broader number to incorporate all sorts of partnerships and consolidations.
Okay. So then the third question in the last one is relates to the affordability threshold. That's proposed on page 9 of the draft plan. And Aqua and also CMUA were providing a joint comment letter, but you know, we suggest that the board use an affordability threshold that's already been recognized in the drinking water world. And for this first plan, we recognize you're going to have a public process to refine what the affordability threshold should be for future plans. We fully support having that process go forward. But for this first plan and this first affordability threshold, we say use one that's already been recognized. And the EPA uses a 2.5% number median household income. That's been part of EPA policy for some time. So we suggest that you take a look at that and use that, since that's already recognized in this area. So that's our last comment. And we'll have more comments in the letter, but those are the ones we wanted to provide today in the time, and we appreciate being able to do this today.
All right, and I believe we have someone from the State Water Board staff that'll hop on and try and respond to your question.
Great.
Yeah, so Cindy, I wasn't sure, were you looking for a response, or that just your recommendation before I launch.
Well, we would love to hear what the staff's thinking, what your thinking is, if you looked at the 2.5% number, if you're open to other things than what's proposed in the draft.
Sure. I mean, honestly, at this point, the 1.5% is what we use when we're making. We've traditionally used in making funding decisions as a cutoff threshold between grant and loan, and it's kind of a first iteration seemed to make the most sense to kind of stick to that, knowing that there's so much nuance that goes into affordability, and one number, whether it's 1.5%, 2.5%, or 2%, is not really going to capture all the nuances that need to go into considering affordability. And just so everybody else recognizes, the requirement in SB 200 is to provide a list of disadvantaged communities that are not meeting that threshold. So there's no funding decision or prioritization around any system being on that list, but it at least gives kind of a first iteration type look, preliminary look at what systems may be struggling with affordability issues. So, I mean, it's certainly something we can look at, but again, I'm not sure for this first round whether that particular number is that critical. Moving forward, I think we'll be looking at, as I said, much more nuanced parameters that account for more than just a straight look at water rates versus the median household income.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate hearing that, and hopefully we'll be able to provide some good background on the 2.5% in the written comments.
Okay, great. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Sure.
Great. Thank you so much, Cindy. Let's see, moving on. Next, we have Stacy Taylor. Stacy, you are now unmuted.
Great, thank you so much. I'm Stacy Taylor, Water Policy Manager for Mesa Water District. And at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I just want to reiterate my points that I made earlier today in the morning meeting, that we keep hearing with reference to the water affordability threshold and figuring out the cost of water, reference to rates only. And we really want to drive home the point that residents pay for their water in various ways, more than just the water rate. The water rate is just the per unit charge. There's an additional charge that residents pay, which is the water meter charge. And there are some districts that also receive revenues from their residents that go to the water system from special assessments and taxes on the property tax bill. If we do not count those dollars, we risk not counting additional cost burdens on DAC and SDAC residents and communities that they're paying for their water service. And that would be doing those members a real disservice if we don't count those additional costs that they're paying for their water service. In fact, there are some water districts that receive 50% or more of their revenues from non-water rates revenues. So I just wanted to reiterate that, and then also reiterate the care that we need to take in using the word fees when we're talking about water service costs as well. I know this is something down the line that we're going to look at as part of the affordability threshold, but I feel it's important to begin these conversations now to make sure that we're being consistent and clear. And I'll conclude and happy to answer any questions or engage in further discussion. Thank you.
Hi, this is Michelle Frederick. I'm going to take this by the Division of Drinking Water. We are very interested in having a discussion with you around this issue. One of the things that we're working on this year is redesigning our EAR, which is our electronic annual report questions, to better reflect water rates, largely because now at this point that effort is going to feed into the affordability work that we'll be doing. So we will be, looking for your input. We are working on that as we speak. So I will get your information and get back to you on, outside this call. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Stacy, for your comments. Okay, it looks like next on our queue, it's going to be Jonathan Rash. Jonathan, let's see, I should be unmuting you now.
Thank you very much. I have the same question I posed earlier today, questions, and actually I had another one that came up in response to Lisa Gover's question earlier from a Campo tribe, the Campo abandoned Kumeyaay Indians. She brought up the question about sovereign immunity at the board meeting last month. We discussed this, and my understanding was that in the resolution to approve the fund expenditure policy, there was included a mandate to study alternatives for the partial waiver of immunity requirement for tribes, and putting that language in the outreach. I just wanted to check in. What's the status of this effort? And attempts by the water board to find alternative ways of including tribes that don't require the waiver of sovereign immunity.
And let's see, I believe Julia Nick with the State Water Board's Office of Chief Counsel will be trying to answer your question. So let's see if she hops on in the next couple seconds.
Hi, Jonathan. This is Julia Nick from the Office of Chief Counsel. So you're correct, and thank you for bringing up that was part of the resolution. This is, I think, going to be an ongoing process. So it's something that we're continuing to work on. And again, appreciate you raising the issue again. I know it's important to work out.
Okay. The other questions I had, I'll repeat from this morning, and I'll kind of do them briefly so that I'm not putting in too much time. I didn't see any tribes listed in the either of the funding solutions lists of the fund expenditure plan. And I do understand that the water board was able to get compliance data for those tribes. So I'm curious why those tribal water systems weren't included on either of those lists.
Yeah, hi, Jonathan. This is Joe Karkowski. We got that information, but we're hesitant to, as a state agency, publishing that, even though it is, publicly available information, and putting it in our document without having first, talked to those tribes. And, Adriana can kind of jump in here as well. I know we have next week a meeting, a tribal advisory council meeting or committee meeting. So certainly that may be one of the issues that came up, but we gave summary level information just to kind of give context for the number of federally recognized tribal water systems that are currently out of compliance, and kind of the status as best we knew it. But we didn't feel it was appropriate right now for us to name those tribes or put them on a list.
Okay, understood, Joe. I appreciate it. One more kind of follow-up question I had is, when it comes to determining whether tribal systems are at risk, there are 6 different criteria listed for a water system qualifying as at risk. And I'm not really clear how the water board is going to get information about 5 of those 6 categories. How are you going to know if a tribal water system has inadequate TMS capacity, or has a system or supply vulnerability, history of past violations, secondary risks, or other identified risk factors? I'm curious to know how tribal systems that are regulated by the federal EPA would be able to qualify as being at risk under those criteria, and then possibly included in the funding solutions list.
Michelle will take that one. Maybe.
Michelle, are you on mute?
I am. No, I'm coming. I'm sorry. I was looking on the other side there. It is, so your question is very good. And it's tribal, I think tribal systems in this context are really similar to public water systems. We are still trying to figure out how we are going to determine at risk for both of them. So part of it will, for our public water systems, we'll be doing out in our state smalls and individual wells. We are doing this year outreach on that. And then I think, you know, simultaneously as we're developing a plan to do outreach for tribal systems, that will be part of what that outreach entails. Whether or not the systems, the tribal systems and the drinking water, you know, state systems are put into the same list or not, I think will depend a lot on how tribal systems want to be integrated into the program. So I think the lack of systems and discussion there isn't a result of us not wanting to engage. It's wanting to be sure that we engage correctly and that we do that. I know we're doing some outreach next week, I believe, at the TAC. And so we are starting those decisions just like we're starting at risk for our public water systems and trying to really engage people on that. Does that help?
No, thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate it. And I totally get that this is very thorny, I think, for the tribe to deal with, you know, and I appreciate the tribe's efforts to integrate tribes, the state's efforts to integrate tribes in this process. And I know it's going to be fraught with details, and I just want to make sure that they have every opportunity to compete on a level playing field with other water systems. So thank you all for considering my comments.
Yeah, no, thank you for your comments and staying engaged. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Did you have anything else to add?
No, thanks.
All right. So moving on to our next comment, it was recommended that staff read this comment out loud, or I'm sorry, it was requested that staff read this out loud. So this comment is coming from Crystal Gonzalez with Clean Water Action, and it reads, "We appreciate the discussion in the plan about existing programs for delivering safe drinking water. We are interested in further understanding how the SAFER programs, solutions, and all the CV SALT solutions that are moving forward as we speak will be coordinated."
Sure. So this is Andrew Altvok with the Division of Drinking Water, and I'll take a shot at answering that. I mean, for one thing, I think as the commenter is aware and others, you know, the CV salts management zones are in the process of developing their early action plans, and those are going to be submitted to the Central Valley Water Board for approval, and a big part of those plans will be determining what the needs are as it relates to replacement drinking water for wells and for public systems that have nitrate problems specifically. And so that's the, you know, the CV salts piece and the management zone piece will be in the specified priority areas in the Central Valley. The management zones will be working on the nitrate component of that. And our preliminary understanding, and part of this comes from the data that our Division of Water Quality and the risk mapping that they've done, our preliminary understanding is a lot of that effort is going to need to focus on state small water systems and individual wells, private wells. And so what we're going to be doing in the SAFER program is really working and coordinating with the staff in Region 5 to make sure that to the extent possible, if we're through SAFER funding and effort, that it's complementary to what the management zones would be doing. So for example, you know, if there's places where there are multiple contaminants and the management zones are responsible for addressing the nitrate portion of those contaminants, then we want to figure out a way to collaborate so that the other contaminant issues that go along with that could also be addressed.
Okay, thank you for that, Andrew. And thank you to Cristal Gonzalez for her comment. All right, so the next comment that we have, it was also requested that staff read this out loud. So I'll go ahead and read it. It is from Patty Avila Garcia with the Community Water Center. And her comment reads, "Good afternoon to the members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to comment and for the Safer Advisory Group meeting earlier today. I have two questions. First, is the SAFER program considering doing proactive outreach to public water systems that are on the out of compliance list but do not yet have a project application in? Second, how can state Smalls/domestic well communities apply for SAFER funding this year? Thank you."
Yeah, hi. So this is Joe Karkowski with the Division of Financial Assistance. So in answer to the first question, yes, we are looking at doing more proactive outreach. I think in some previous advisory group meetings and stakeholder meetings, we described an effort that the Division of Drinking Water and Division of Financial Assistance engaged in, and where we did kind of a triage of all of the systems that are out of compliance. And part of that was to identify whether those systems were getting funding or in the queue to get funding from us, or if they weren't, if we knew whether they had some other potential funding source. So we've done that. We are following up on a number of those systems where there may not be a project going on right now to make sure that we know they're either on the path to getting a project and getting into compliance, or whether there's some help they need, like technical assistance, that sort of thing. And we did, recognizing that we needed to be more proactive. A lot of the funding from fiscal year 1920 went to additional technical assistance. So once we get those agreements in place with our technical assistance providers, they'll have the funding capacity to be more proactive in reaching out to some of those water systems. And then the second question is, yes, we have a pre-application that can be used for applying for funding. So any of those communities can apply. I think it's trickier for state smalls and domestic well communities because there's not necessarily a legal entity that can apply. So in a number of cases, we may have, we do have some technical assistance providers who are working with some of those communities or interested in working with them. The other thing you'll see in the fund expenditure plan is part of our strategy with state smalls and domestic wells is to see if there might be some local partners, like a groundwater sustainability agency or one of the CV salt management groups that might be willing to work with the local community and help them through the funding process.
All right, thank you for that, Joe.
Sure.
Let's see, and thank you to Pati Avila Garcia for her comment. All right, so it looks like we do not have any other commentators on the line currently. So I'm going to go back and read one of the comments that we received earlier today from Logan Largent with the California Association of Mutual Water Companies. And this is a lengthy statement, so be prepared. All right, it reads, "We appreciate the efforts that the State Water Board has made to accommodate the eligibility of mutual water companies for help under SAFER. However, our members, which have already accepted state assistance to facilitate consolidations or technical assistance, now face a tax on the grants used to facilitate those improvements. This can be remedied if language in the state budget acknowledges the 501c12 tax-exempt status of mutual water companies. The legislature has twice considered such language, and it passed the policy committees by unanimous votes in both the Assembly and the Senate, but has been referred to the suspense file in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. The state impact reported by the Franchise Tax Board is only about $800,000. Thus, the savings to the state of averting the failure of many small mutuals would be substantially less than the alternative costs of the state providing water service over time in areas where not-for-profit water suppliers like mutuals have collapsed completely. We are supportive of the provisions made in the SAFER Plan to emergency situations as urged by the advisory group. However, we are disappointed that the plan does not include board member Sean McGuire's recommendation in relation to the upcoming standard for chromium-6, that assessment of systems in potential trouble of not meeting a new MCL be conducted in parallel with its adoption by the Office of Financial Assistance. This process of planning for need of disadvantaged communities in the process of adopting new MCLs should pertain to all new drinking water quality standards being developed.
Yeah, hi, this is Joe. So with respect to the first question, that looks like a comment mostly on some pending legislation. So we do understand what the issue and problem is, but we really can't provide comments on pending state legislation. The second question, I wasn't totally sure what the context of that was. Just as by way of explanation, in our fund expenditure plan, we do have funding set aside for interim solutions for at-risk systems. And we calculated that based on looking at those water systems that had previously exceeded the hexavalent chromium MCL. So we've actually set aside some funding to provide interim replacement water for those at-risk systems. I'm trying to see what, I don't think there was, yeah. So anyway, we did, bottom line is we did take into consideration the systems that have previously exceeded that standard. And certainly, as part of the development of the MCL, and maybe Andrew or Michelle can weigh in as well, one of the big considerations is economics and affordability associated with needing to treat to whatever the new standard might be.
All right, thank you, Joe.
Sure.
And thank you to Logan for that comment. So just as a reminder to folks, it looks like we don't have any other commentators on the line, but I just want to put out this last call that if you'd like to submit a comment or a question, it can be general or specific, you can fill out the online form at the link on the slide. And if you can't fill out an online form for whatever reason, you can email the following information to safer@waterboards.ca.gov. It's your name, affiliation, the last 3 digits of your number. If you'd like to read your comment yourself, with the with the subject QA public comment. So we'll give you all some time just to see if anyone has any last minute comments or questions that they would like to submit either on the form or via email. And in the meantime, to give folks a chance and an opportunity to submit any last minute comments, I want to open up the floor to any other advisory group members who may be on the line and who have any reflections or questions or reactions to any of the comments that we heard today. So if there are any advisory group members on the line who would like to provide any reactions or reflections, now's your chance. All right, hearing none. Let's see, I can open up the floor if any state water board staff have any follow-up reflections or reactions that they'd like to share while we wait for folks to submit any last minute comments or questions on the form. right? And it looks like we got everything covered. No water board staff or advisory group members will be sharing at this time. So, and it looks like we haven't had any last minute comments or questions come in on the form or via email. So it looks like we're going to be moving on to our closing statements from Adriana Renteria with the Office of Public Participation. And again, just as a reminder, this session is being webcasted in English and Spanish, and the recording for the event will be available after the fact online for folks to view in the future. So with that, Adriana, I will pass it off to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Itzel, and thank you to all the advisory group members, members of the public, and State Water Board staff who joined us this morning and again this afternoon. We want to thank you again for participating and for answering questions and for helping us kind of think through this process. If we didn't get a chance to go through your question or your comment today, please note that you can always submit written comments on the draft expenditure plan by June 16th. So next week is the final deadline to give comments specifically on the fund expenditure plan. But if you have any additional comments on the SAFER program, we always welcome your comments throughout. So please feel free to be in communication with us. There will also be an opportunity to comment directly on the fund expenditure plan at the board meeting that's taking place on July 7th. So July 7th is when the State Water Board is going to consider the adoption of the fund expenditure plan. So all of the comments and questions that you all brought today would be really great to also bring to the State Water Board members on July 7th as well. As a reminder for folks who didn't hear earlier, all throughout today's conversation, both the advisory group member breakout session and group discussion, as well as all of the questions that were asked here, will be summarized and shared with board members. So even though they were not, even though not all board members were able to listen in and participate in today's discussion, we will be sharing your feedback throughout the development of this process. The other key date we want to highlight is that on July 22nd, there will be a risk assessment webinar tentatively planned. So please sign up for the SAFER Lyris list, where we will share more information about how to join to learn more about the risk assessment. One other reminder is that if you have not yet already, we please invite you to check out the SAFER website to learn more about upcoming events or opportunities to engage and help us improve the SAFER program. If you haven't logged on to the SAFER website already, you can visit it at waterboards.ca/SAFER. So once again, we just want to appreciate and give our gratitude for everyone who was able to participate today. Thank you, and we hope you have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And Adriana, you cut out a little bit. So that again for folks, that website is waterboards.ca.gov/SAFER. All right, thank you, everyone.